Bad fam. Rahul bad, Rahul bad. Yeah, gotta get that right. You know? Rahul bad. Anuki Amun Re, tribal liaison for the Yamassee Tribe of the Creek Nation and Chief Justice of the Cahokia Territory. Today, the subject matter will be sovereign citizen versus retained sovereignty. What's the difference? Before we begin, it behooves me to read the Yamassee Tribe of the Creek Nation preamble. So without further ado, I'll begin. We, the people of the Yamassee Native American Tribe of Indigenous Peoples, acknowledging our devout gratitude to Ane, manifesting most high unique, Amun Re, manifestation of hidden, Amun Re, manifesting eternal, Anun Re, ascended, appearing as Nazdar, Atum Re, a true and living Pharaoh. Our Maku, black eagle, thunderbird, with healing and HIM wings. A son of righteousness, Ma'at Re, chief, Naya, Malachi, Z York El. For our existence as a free, sovereign, and indigenous nation, and relying on his divine guidance for our survival as a nation. Rahul Bat fam, Rahul Bat, Rahul Bat. Today the subject matter is sovereign citizen versus retained sovereignty. The Yamassee Tribe of the Creek Nation, 208-1999, is a government of retained sovereigns, not sovereign citizens. Let's get that straight. What is the difference between a retained sovereign and a sovereign citizen? Well, now we have to go into the words. So, for you all, I went through Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition. I used the 6th edition because it still cites case law. And I went and got the definitions of sovereign citizen, or the word sovereign, and of the word citizen. And then I went ahead and got the definitions of the word retain and the word sovereignty. Okay? So now let's break down the latter. The first word we're going to look up is sovereign. This is the big, wonderful, magical word that got everybody up in arms. Sovereign. A person, which a person is an instrument, so it could be a trust, an LLC, a corporation. Body or state in which independent and supreme authority is vested. A chief ruler with supreme power. A king or other ruler in a monarchy. So a person, body, or state in which independent and supreme authority is vested. That is a sovereign, a chief ruler with supreme power. Now, what is a citizen? A citizen is one who, under the Constitution and laws of the United States, or of a particular state, is a member of the political community, owing allegiance, and being entitled to the enjoyment of full civil rights. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So there's key words inside that definition. Subject, allegiance. So these are two words that a sovereign cannot be. Subject to another or in allegiance to another. Okay? So let's see the definition of allegiance. Obligation of fidelity and obedience to government in consideration for protection. In consideration for protection. Right? So a sovereign citizen is a supreme ruler who is a subject to another state. Now, obviously, that's an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense. So, according to the U.S. government, right, I'm about to cite some case law on what they have to say about a sovereign citizen. Okay, this is from a federal judge. This was addressed to me, in fact. United States versus Hart says, rejecting jurisdictional challenge based on defendant's argument, he was a sovereign citizen. So you can't go into the courts and say that you're a sovereign citizen. Another source of case law, United States versus Schneider, describing sovereign citizen theory as having no conceivable validity in American law. I agree. United States versus Joachim. Court found argument completely without merit and patently frivolous and rejected it without expending any more of the court's resources or discussion. So they don't even entertain those who come around talking that sovereign citizen crap. United States versus Benaby. Describing the conduct of another sovereign citizen and collecting cases rejecting the group's claims as frivolous. These theories should be rejected summarily, however they are presented. There's that word frivolous. Frivolous, frivolous, frivolous. So according to the United States courts, a sovereign citizen is a frivolous claim of some fake form of authority. I agree with the states. Now, what is a retained sovereign? Well, first let's go into the definitions. The definition of retained is to continue to hold, have use, recognize, etc., and to keep. One second, Bob. Let me put you right here. Yeah, I need him walking with me on this one. What does the back of this book say? This is Patasu, right? One of my favorites. What does the back of this scroll say? The United Nubian Nation, a government of retained sovereigns. Not sovereign citizens, retained sovereigns. To retain is to continue to hold, have use of, recognize, etc., and to keep. So to keep your what? Sovereignty. What is the definition of sovereignty? Yes, the definition of sovereign, as you can see down here at the bottom, that's Black's Law 6th edition, is not the same as the definition of sovereignty, which has a longer definition. So to retain is to keep. Sovereignty is the supreme, absolute, and uncontrollable power by which any independent state, the Yamassee Tribe of the Creek Nation, is governed. Supreme political authority. I don't have supreme political authority in Joe Biden's state. Okay? The instruments generated have supreme political authority. The plebiscite trust charter, the ratification of the plebiscite, and the Constitution, which creates the organs of our government, our state. The supreme will. That's what it says. The supreme will. Paramount control of the Constitution, the Yamassee Tribe of the Creek Nation Constitution, and frame of government and its administrators. The self-sufficient source of political power, from which all specific political powers are derived. And I can go on. So you see, to retain is to keep all of those aspects of your sovereignty. What do I mean when I say of your sovereignty? I mean any Native American tribe. So look, we cited case law for what the United States has to say about sovereign citizens. Well, let's see what the United States has to say about retained sovereigns. Okay? What I'm about to read to you is an excerpt of a journal, the Cornell International Law Journal, Volume 13, Issue 1, Winter of 1980, Article 4, titled Tribal Court Criminal Jurisdiction Over 9 Indians, Testing the Limits of Retained Sovereignty, by Richard A. Samuels. Now, these are excerpts that I took from this journal. The concept of retained sovereignty is rooted in the conquest and territorial acquisition by the Europeans. Remember, to retain is to keep. The definition of conquest is, in international law, the acquisition of the sovereignty of a country. So someone acquiring our sovereignty by force of arms, exercised by an independent power, which, hear this, reduces the vanquished to the submission of its empire. To conquer a territory or nation by means of force. Black's Law, 6th edition. So the concept of retained sovereignty is rooted in the conquest, which we just read the definition of, and the territorial acquisition by the Europeans. Retained sovereignty was established through the federal government's recognition of the inherent power of Native American tribes. So the federal government recognized the inherent power of Native American tribes and thus established the term retained sovereignty. Between 1778 and 1871, the United States ratified 370 Native American treaties. The use of the treaty power and the form and scope of these treaties reflected an implicit assumption that Native American tribes retained attributes of sovereignty. In 1940, almost 100 years after the U.S. government reduced the Native Americans to the status of its ward, the Department of Interior stated the fundamental principles of retained sovereign powers. 1. An Indian tribe possesses, in the first instance, all the powers of any sovereign state. The Yamassee Tribe of the Creek Nation is an Indian tribe, thus in the first instance retains all the sovereign powers of any independent state, or all the powers of any sovereign state. 2. This was stated by the DOI, the Department of Interior. Continuing. 2. Conquest, which we just read, renders the tribe subject to legislative power of the United States. True, if you come over here and force us in arms to be a subject of your empire, as it says, conquest renders the tribe subject to the legislative power of the United States and in substance terminates the external powers of sovereignty of the tribe. Okay, fair enough. You came over here up in arms and you forced us into submission. And what would that do? That would cancel what they attempt to refer to as the external sovereignty, or in other words, the administration of the land is really what they mean. But conquest does not by itself affect the internal sovereignty of the tribe. So, despite the fact that the United States was conquered to a degree by the Europeans, it does not change the fact that Native American tribes have an inherent source of sovereignty. It comes from within, not without. It comes from within the government, not without. 3. These internal powers, the government powers, are subject to qualifications by treaties, New Ecota Treaty, and by express legislation. Express mean written down of Congress, which means that put your plebiscite charter on record, put the ratification on record, put the Constitution on record. No, it's not the white man's paperwork. It's our paperwork. Okay? But save is thus expressly qualified. So those tribes that are expressly qualified, full powers of internal sovereignty are vested in the Indian tribes and in their duly constituted organs of government. These are the words of the Department of Interior, not mine. The inference retained sovereignty has been raised by the U.S. government's use of treaty power and has been recognized by the U.S. Supreme Court in various degrees. For example, United States versus Wheeler, more case law, decided that tribal judicial power flows from retained sovereign powers. So the judicial power that we have in the Yamassee Tribe of the Creek Nation flows from our inherent sovereignty. It doesn't come from the DOI or the federal courts. It comes from within. We have the power to do such. Okay? Justice Stewart wrote, "The sovereignty that the Indian tribes retain is of a unique and limited character. It exists only at the sufferance of Congress and is subject to complete deficits. But until Congress acts, the tribes retain their existing sovereign powers. In sum, Indian tribes still possess those aspects of sovereignty not withdrawn by treaty or statute or by implication as a necessary result of their dependent status." So even the implied dependent status that certain tribes have to the United States government does not take away their inherent sovereignty. Okay? In 1934, the solicitor of the Department of Interior analyzed the relationship between tribal sovereignty and acts of Congress. Each Indian tribe begins its relationship with the federal government as what? A sovereign power, recognized as such in treaty and legislation. So you have to show them your sovereign power. The way we show them is through the new Ecota Treaty and express legislation. Express means write that shit down. Excuse my French, I'm not French. The powers of sovereignty have been limited from time to time by special treaties and laws designed to take from Indian tribes control of matters which these tribes can no longer safely be permitted to handle. The statutes of Congress, then, must be examined to determine the limitations of tribal sovereignty, rather than to determine its sources. So, utilizing treaty law and U.S. law to determine the limits of sovereignty, not to determine the source of sovereignty or its positive content. So what's the difference between a retained sovereign and a sovereign citizen? A sovereign citizen doesn't exist. If you claim to be a sovereign citizen, you might get locked up. A sovereign citizen is an oxymoron. You can't be sovereign and then be a subject to someone else. A retained sovereign is a national. It's someone who retains their inherent sovereignty through the sovereignty of the tribe. You can't be a retained sovereign and a U.S. citizen. A U.S. citizen is a subject. If you travel with the U.S. passport, you would be presumed a U.S. citizen. If you have a United States driver's license or state ID, you would be presumed a U.S. citizen. If you don't have liens over your Cestui and your Cestui via trust, and people are trading on your name and sending you bills in the mail, you will be presumed a U.S. citizen. There's no such thing as a sovereign citizen. You can't be a retained sovereign as long as you're a U.S. citizen. So the solution, where Patasu? So the solution is to nationalize into your tribe the United Nubian Nation, Yamassee Tribe of the Creek Nation, a government of retained sovereigns. So what's stopping you from nationalizing? I want to explain something right before I go. Dr. York always said, I came giving you what you want so that you can learn to want what it is that I have to give. What did Dr. York have to give? This is what he had to give. 2/08/1999. The only thing that he gave you that not only didn't you ask for, you don't even want. So if people think that Dr. York is so prolific because he gave you the AEO, AMOM, the Beehive, he gave you all of these scrolls, he's such a prolific writer, and this is everything y'all asked for. Y'all wanted religion. Y'all was the Ansars. Y'all was the Nubian Islamic Hebrews. Y'all was Christians and all of these. Y'all asked for that. Y'all asked for that. And he gave you a nation that y'all still don't want. So you think if he was so prolific and giving you the things that you asked for, what he actually came to give is not more prolific than what you was asking for? You think that that Beehive and all of that AMOM and that AEO is more important than what he came to give you? Okay. So that's a question. It's rhetorical. I'm not making any statements here. Just asking. So that ends the video of a sovereign citizen versus a retained sovereign. A sovereign citizen doesn't exist. You'll get locked up claiming to be a sovereign citizen. A retained sovereign is a national of an Indian or a Native American tribe. All Sabians and Nuwapians who wish to be retained sovereigns have to nationalize into the state that their Maku brought for them. 2/08/1999, the Yamassee Tribe of the Creek Nation. Without further ado, why do?